Hello everyone, Gilligan Kruger 0829 here, and welcome to the first day of another movie series marathon review. This series review will be prepping us up for the upcoming superhero reboot film, The Amazing Spider-Man, set to hit American cinemas next week. And, with it being so close, I decided to look at the more recent live-action adaptations of the superhero story that we've gotten in the past couple of years, that being from 2002 to 2007, or, as I like to call it, the Raimi trilogy. Now, let me open up and say it right now, this series review is going to be a lot more straightforward than my last two, because I'm not looking at spin-offs, I'm not looking at crossovers, it's just Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3, and hopefully on the last day I can give you my views on the long-anticipated reboot when it hits theaters. But, of course, as with any series review, I gotta start with the beginning. So, let's look at 2002's blockbuster hit, simply titled Spider-Man. So, Spider-Man starts with an opening narration by Peter Parker, who is played here by Tobey Maguire. And we learn almost instantly that Peter is pretty much one of the biggest nerds you'll ever see. He's constantly mocked by his classmates, and he constantly fails trying to impress his love interest, Mary Jane Watson, played here by Kirsten Dunst. But we also meet two other important characters. One of them is Harry Osborn, Peter's friend, and played by James Franco, and Harry's father, Norman, played by William Dafoe, who in this is the president of a multi-million-dollar weapons manufacturing division. So, Peter, Harry, and Mary Jane are all at a field trip to a genetics laboratory when Peter is bitten by a radioactive spider, and he starts to notice he's having these sort of spider-esque syndrome abilities happening to him. And the rest of the movie is essentially Peter coping with these powers and learning what he has to do with them. All the while we see a new scientific race going on with Norman and what's going to happen with him. So, as some of you know, Spider-Man was the highest grossing movie of 2002, even beating out other highly anticipated films like Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers and Star Wars Episode II: Attack of the Clones. Growing up with these movies, though, personally, I always wondered, why did Spider-Man win? I mean, the other two were also got a lot of hype, had a lot of special effects. Why did the superhero movie win in the end? Especially when you're looking at Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. But, as I got older, I did seem to notice a few things, and as we all know, there's a lot of good stuff in Spider-Man. Like, for instance, I really liked the origin story in the movie. It was one of my favorite parts. Mainly because, for me personally, it was handled in a kind of a mixed fashion. Like, some of it was stern and serious and really delved into it. But then you had some scenes that really actually kind of worked for chuckles and laughs. Like, there's one scene where Peter is on top of a building and he's trying to spin a web, or sling a web would be better to put it, and he has no idea how he's doing it, so he's saying all these magic things. He's like, "Go, web, go! Fly!" Or, of course, my favorite, Shazam! That's right, Spider-Man said Shazam. Clearly this is a Sam Raimi movie. But overall, I just really liked the aspect of the origin story, really thought they pulled it off well. And, while we're on that, I really had fun with most of the action of this story. It was high octane, and again, what more can I say about it? Both of these things, in fact, most of this movie is just a lot of fun. But, as we all know, that's not the only thing that fuels a superhero movie. How are the characters in this? And I'll just admit openly right now, they really are kind of hit and miss here. Let's start with the most controversial, obviously, with Maguire as Spider-Man. In fact, alright, let me amend on that. I don't really want to say controversial, because it's not like there's huge roaring debates over this, but I have come across people who have opposing views on them. Some really liked the casting, and others thought it was horrible. I'm a little bit between there personally, because there are some times where Maguire gives a devoted and strong-willed response or performance better for this role, and then other times he's just acting like a pansy or a jackass. In fact, one of his jackass moments leads to the biggest crying scene in the film, which I won't spoil what it is, but yeah, so that was kind of... I really want to go into that. But, you know what, while I'm on the subject, he's not the only character. I actually personally really liked the chemistry between Franco and Dafoe. I really thought they had a good sort of father-son relation going on. I think for him, this is kind of a character you can relate to. Me personally, I actually kind of relate to this character a little bit more, since we have the sort of father is away a lot and sometimes doesn't get to spend the time with the son. And that's happened to a lot of us. We've wanted to be with our parents, and I thought this movie really got it well. And both of them really, I think, took this role seriously. Dafoe, maybe a little bit too much at times, but again, what can you do? And personally, I'm just going to say it right here, I thought the side characters actually made this movie. I thought there were some that were really, really well acted. Like, I loved, what's his name, Cliff Robertson and Rosemary Harris, hopefully I said them both right, as Uncle Ben and Aunt May, because they really did well as the supportive aunt and uncle. They tried to get involved, but I never thought was too much. There's one talking between Peter and his uncle that is both motivational and almost heartbreaking. So, again, I really thought they put a lot into the role, and absolutely hilarious is J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. This was spot-on casting. Like, I've never read the comics, but I really can't imagine this character any other way now. In fact, if there was one thing I could take from these movies and bring it into the reboot, it would definitely be J.K. Simmons. So, yeah, he was a lot of fun for me. So, pretty much that sums it up. There's a lot of fun in this movie. The origin story is interesting, there's fun action, and the characters are mostly enjoyable. This must be a really good superhero movie, right? Well, not exactly. The biggest problem in this movie for me, it's kind of a seed. It's not so much a huge problem on its own, but it kind of branches off into several others. Like, my issue with this movie, and I think I've heard a lot of people say this, is that it tries a little bit too hard to be a superhero film at times, because a lot of this stuff really feels sort of comic book-esque. Like, Mary Jane Watson, who you've heard me go on about her in some of my Avengers videos, but she is pretty much only meant to be the damsel in distress character. She screams, she falls, Spider-Man has to come pick her up. And while there is a sort of romance between Parker and Watson, and there is weight on it, that's a better way to put it, I really never found it all that interesting. That's just me personally. And the action, too, while fun, does get really silly at times. Like, there's one scene where Spider-Man is going to fight the Green Goblin when jumping off of hot air balloons. I'm thinking, that's kind of silly. And it's CGI enhanced, so. And while we're on the Green Goblin, yeah, I think he was a decent villain, but on an appearance level, I honestly thought he looked more like a Power Rangers villain than a superhero nemesis. So, yeah, those are really my gripes. And one thing, it's really more of a nitpick than anything else, but are Mary Jane, Peter, and Harry the only decent kids in their high school? I swear, everyone in that high school is made up of bullies. When I was younger, I didn't want to go anywhere close to New York because I was under the impression that everyone there was an asshole. And I'm thinking, why would I want to go there? But I don't know. Maybe it's just we're focused on the wrong kids, but maybe it was Raimi's intention. I don't know. Just a nitpick, my own thing. And while we're on this, yes, the director is Sam Raimi. I've mentioned that 2 or 3 times, who you may know from directing films like the Evil Dead series and Darkman. And those films really had one thing in common, and that's they never took themselves too seriously. And I definitely feel that vibe is brought here. And while most of the time it works, that style, for me personally, again, more of a nitpick than anything else, does at times fall flat. So, yeah, those are my issues. At a lot of the time, it does feel like I'm reading a live-action comic book. But, in the grand scheme of things, I did enjoy most of the characters. I had a lot of fun watching the action, no matter how hammy it was, and I really enjoyed the origin story. So, I was about 10 when I first saw this movie, and though I don't like it as much now, I still enjoy it. I can still recommend it. Personally, I thought it was a good start to an overall nice trilogy. So, 3.5 stars out of 5 for Spider-Man. You can find all my movie reviews on my YouTube channel. If you have a movie you'd like me to review, comment on this video or on my channel. Subscribe if you like. Until next time, peace!